Greetings. I'm Karen Colligan, and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. If there's one thing I know, it's that every leader is unique. There's no single way to lead. Your leadership style is shaped by your experiences and by your values and by your strengths. And that's why this podcast exists. We bring in leaders from all walks of life to answer the same 6 questions, revealing their unique approaches to leadership. And so why does that matter to you? Because leadership isn't about following a script. It's about figuring out who you want to be as a leader. So listen closely, take what resonates, and start shaping your very own leadership path. So let's get moving and talk to our next leadership guest. In this episode, I'm thrilled to be speaking to Cate Luzio, founder and CEO of Luminary. We're going to hear all about Cate's approach to leadership. So Cate, welcome and thank you for being with us today.
It's great to be here, Karen. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cate, before we get into all the questions, tell us a little bit about who you are and give us a snapshot of Luminary before we even start our leadership conversation.
Sure. So I would say an accidental entrepreneur. I did not ever set out my career to start my own business. And if you had asked me a week or even a day before I wrote the business plan for Luminary, I would have laughed at you if you said you're going to start your own company. I spent most of my career, almost 20 years, in finance for 3 of the largest banks in the world, and had a fabulous and an accelerated career, I think, down because of my leadership and my work ethic. Prior to that, I was in startup tech. And before that, I started my career in nonprofit. So nothing that I have done in my career all the way to date was anything that I ever thought that I would do. I was actually going to follow in my father's footsteps as an FBI agent. And then graduated from college and realized that's not what I wanted to do, and made a big pivot and worked in nonprofit to then tech in the original internet boom, to then being recruited into finance. And then 6.5 years ago, almost 7 years ago now, decided to give that all up and start my own business.
Oh, and torture yourself as an entrepreneur.
Exactly.
Once we're an entrepreneur, though, you can't stop. It's the worst.
Yeah. Yes. I love that word torture, because I think I totally underestimated the roller coaster of it not being an entrepreneur. And my younger brother is an entrepreneur. And I remember when he was, he has sold his company since starting it, but I would say, I thought you could make your own schedule. And why are you always working if you're an entrepreneur? And the level of respect I have for him now is tenfold, because I see how hard it is.
Yes. Oh, yeah, it's absolutely hard. And people come to me, as I'm sure they come to you on a regular basis, and say, what is it like to be an entrepreneur? And, Cate, here's what I say. You have to believe, and you have to be a pit bull, and you have to hold on and not let go. And you can't listen to all the naysayers around you. You just have to believe and keep going. And of course, be smart and have a business plan.
Of course. And bet on yourself. Yes. I think I learned that very early on in my life, which I think has kind of driven my leadership skills, but betting on yourself and don't shy away from that, and what you bring to the table for your business, for your customers, for your teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great. Okay, good. This is going to be a great conversation. It already is. Okay, so first things first. So there's so many ways to define leadership, Cate. And again, part of this podcast is to really get people to understand that there is no one size that fits all. And so how do you define leadership?
I think, number one, it is standing up for what you believe in, standing up for others. I think that really helps to define a leader in how they approach the business, but also how they approach the people and their customers. And part of that is, I think, by listening and standing up for those around you. And that's, I think, what's lost a lot in today is listening. And having an open mind. I think the other thing is finding your own way and your own style but being able to adjust your tone, adjust your communication to those that are around you. And I think so much of that for me happened in those years in finance. I was able to have watch great leaders and watch very poor managers and take what I thought would resonate for me individually, or what resonated with me as an employee, but then also those styles and what worked. I'm also an extrovert, but that doesn't mean that everybody else around me is an extrovert. So I have to really make sure that I know my audience. And I've learned that over the course of the last 28 years in becoming the leader that I am today. But it's a lifelong journey, right? I'm continuing to adjust, and I'm continuing to adapt and bring in different skills and different perspectives. So I don't think you're just a leader and that's how you are. I think it's ebbs and flows, and you change depending on the situation or the crisis that's in front of you, or the decisions that you have to make.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the lifelong journey about leadership is around being curious, about continuously learning, about seeing what else is going on, what is trending, how do I adapt, why do I have to adapt, will I adapt? And it's never ending. And we've both been around leaders, I'm sure you have, I can't speak for you and I will, who don't do that. And when you're around those kinds of people, you feel I feel closed in. I feel like I don't have options, I don't have possibilities. And if my leader doesn't believe that there's possibilities, why would I believe that there's possibilities?
Yeah, and I think there is a huge a word that is not talked about enough in the sort of journey of leadership, which is insecurity. I think that there have been plenty of managers that I worked for. I wouldn't call them leaders. I would call them managers, because I think there's a very big distinction, that were insecure. And so that really showed through in their inability to inspire followership, to inspire people, to bring people along. And I can see that from a mile away. And that's just for being around the block, right? I mean, it's not, I'm not just new into my career. And I think this getting past your own insecurities, trusting your gut, but also trusting your people is a big part of leadership.
Yeah. And the other thing what I always think about when I think about really strong leaders I've been around is that strong leaders, of course, have an ego. We all do. And they're smart enough to hire smarter people than them around them.
100%.
They don't know everything. And yet they're confident enough, to go back to your insecurity, they're confident enough to say, hey, I need to have the best of the best. I'm bringing them in because then we will be the best of the best.
100% agree. I think that for me, there was a clear example of that when I left banking and started the company, because I had all these incredible resources around me as a leader within the financial institutions I work for. I had resources at my disposal. I had infrastructure, and I was being served resumes and said, here's the person to hire in marketing, or the candidates. As an entrepreneur, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I really went out into my network, friends that were running marketing organizations and agencies, friends that had been in leadership development in the banks that I work for, and said, hey, what kind of skills do I need to hire? Because I don't have all of these, and I want to hire the right people. I need to understand, where they are in their career and what do they want out of their career, benchmarking. So for me, absolutely. And I always want to hire people that can take my job one day.
Yeah. Yeah. Succession planning, baby. That's what we talk about. Yes, indeed. All right. Question number 2. Values to me are just the baseline. It's how we make our really easy decisions. Hey, and then when decisions are complex, if we can go back inside to that core of our values, then we'll make the right decision. It might be a hard decision. We might still lose sleep at night. And yet at the end of the day, we know we've done the right thing. So tell us, what are your top 3 values?
So I think that my guiding principle for everything is do everything with the best intention. And if I can do that every day, and I can make sure that's what my team is doing every day, and of course, sometimes we're going to make mistakes and we're going to make people unhappy, and there's going to be impact. But if I can wake up every day thinking that I am doing everything with the best intention, but also believing that people are good, that they're not out to get me, that they're not out to destroy the business, right? And my mom would say that's a bit of like the Pollyanna thinking. She is an incredibly glass half full person. I'm not as much. I aspire to that. So one of the things that drives me though every day is if I can do it and I set that example and I role model that for my team, then they will show up and do that. I think the other value is again, thinking of yourself as the customer. So when I started my career in finance, the bank that I worked for was called MBNA. It was a consumer finance company, credit cards, mortgages, personal loans. And in every campus that they had, across every door, with the exception of the bathrooms, it said, when you're walking out of the door, think of yourself as a customer.
Wow.
And so that you never forgot it. No
Yes.
matter what you were doing, you were always had the customer lens to help guide you in your decisions, right? Because at the end of the day, we are all customers. We're
Yes,
all a
absolutely.
consumer in some way. And so how would you want to be treated? And so for me, I sort of take that one step further in thinking about if I was on the team, how would I want to be treated?
Mm,
So there's the customer lens, and then there's the sort of employee lens. And last is, I am going to set the bar high for myself. And I'm in turn going to set the bar high for everyone around me. I think people do want to strive to do better, to be better, to learn, to get invested in. So again, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's think of that they have the best intentions, and let's give them the opportunity to do better, to be better, and to invest in them.
yeah. And Kate, we know that when you're in an organization, no matter what it is, no matter what size it is that with leadership, stuff runs downhill. And people are watching, even if you don't think they're
All the
watching.
time.
Yes. And your customers are, your employees are. And that's why we have to watch ourselves and test ourselves, because are we emulating what we want our customers to feel and our employees to feel?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 Hate that stuff runs downhill. Yes, I
Yeah.
do. All righty, though. So, question number three, what's the best advice you were ever given as a leader?
Don't second guess yourself. You're in the room, you've got the job, you're at the table for a reason. So stop second guessing yourself. And I think this is really important for women. There's, I hate the words imposter syndrome. I know we all have insecurities, but I think we perpetuate this idea that all women have imposter syndrome. Again, own the fact that you've got the job, whether it's your first job ever, or you're now in the CEO or C-suite or anything in between. You're in the role. So make the most of it. Lean into your skills, play to your strengths, invest in those areas of development, but know that you're there for a reason versus constantly second guessing. Should you say something? Should you do this? And I think that's so important for us throughout our career to really own that.
And Kate, where do you think that confidence comes from? I mean, we get the job, we're in the room, we're sitting around the table. Where do you believe the confidence comes that I can speak up, that I will say what I need to say, that I don't want to say it and then someone next to me say it louder and all of a sudden it's his or her idea. So where do you think the confidence comes from?
I think listen, that all of the things you said are going to happen. That's just business. That's especially corporate America. But if that person next to you sort of restates your idea, say, thanks for reinforcing what I just said.
Yeah.
There are always ways to do this. And I think giving tips and advice to younger talent, younger managers, younger people managers, influence leaders is helping them to do that. For me, at a young age, my father and my mother, but my father in particular, sort of drilled into me that if you are doing your best, trying your best, you can be the best. And that doesn't mean the best of everybody. It means your best,
Yeah.
the best version of yourself. So for me, of course, are there times when I second guess? Of course, we're human. But if you know your shit, if
Yeah.
you're prepared, then don't be afraid to own that. One tip that I do give people that are afraid or they're new into that role, that's a newer seat at the table, is if you don't know what to say, you're lacking a bit of that confidence, ask questions.
Mm,
You're
nice.
still using your voice,
Hmm.
right? You're still being visible and engaged. So
Yeah.
if you don't have a comment or an idea yet, then ask questions
Yeah.
because people will remember that you are engaged, that you are curious, that you want to know and learn more. And so hopefully that next time you're sitting around that table and you're feeling like I got to jump in, you will feel that more of that confidence.
Yes. Yeah. Love that. Okay, great. Okay. So the fourth question, we're currently going through an enormous amount of transition and change. We don't have to get into any of that. How do you lead through transition and change? Because transition and change is all about the emotion, Cate. It's all about like what's going on inside.
The way I lead through any change is through honesty and
Mm,
just having open dialogue and communication around what's happening, whether that's at the company itself, so my at Luminary, whether that's, in the world, whether that's also transitions for people. I think that everyone personalizes things because it's just easy to do that. And so if we can have honest and open conversation and dialogue, that's amongst my team, that's manager to employee. I think that is sets a great example for that continued open dialogue so that when issues or challenges arrives, the ability to have healthy debate and communication about something versus again personalizing it, it's me versus you. And I think that happens in every single company, no matter how small or how large. So I choose to be honest, direct. By the way, that's not always everyone's cup of tea either, but that's for me, it's what you see is what you get. I'm demanding as hell. I'm going to, again, like I said, set that bar really high for myself and others, but I'm also extremely compassionate and caring. The only way I can be compassionate and caring is if I have open dialogue with the people around the table.
yeah. My dad used to say to us, one lie leads to another. And before you know it, you forget the first lie you told.
Mm,
Just be honest. And then you don't
beyond.
have to remember anything. I was like, and when you're young, you're like, oh, dad, and as I continued to grow up, even in high school, I was like, well, he may be on to something. And it's the truth because sometimes the truth is really hard to say.
Yeah,
Hey, yeah.
yeah,
And so you want
yeah.
to, code it a little bit, and that doesn't help anybody. No way.
Yeah, and listen, we're going through an extraordinary amount of change in the world, right? But we've also gone through extraordinary amount of change and disruption throughout the pandemic. And I went through the financial crisis, and I've
Yeah.
gone through layoffs and people changes and org changes and acquisitions. And you just have to be honest with people. At the end of the day, they are just like you, and they're going to see through the BS. So be
Mm.
honest and let's have real conversations.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. Question number 5. We know the best leaders are curious and always learning. So what do you do? What are your tools? What are your resources? How do you continually grow and develop? Now, I'll let you answer the question. However, I do want to tell the audience, I go to Luminary, and let me tell you, they have unbelievable programming where I continue to learn. So that I'm sure is part of your learning. And I want you to know as a customer, it's a huge piece of my learning for me is to go to those events and hear those resources come together. So I'll let you answer the question.
Yeah, well, so as you say, I think some of it's a little bit when I created the company is there was a motive there, a selfish motive that's something that I was needing. I was seeing many of my peers and friends needing and really crowdsourced, what if you were to have a resource, what would you need? We can all go to brunch with our friends, et cetera, and that's great. But like, if I really want to continue learning, I wanted access to information and knowledge transfer. So Luminary for me is a great example. And you've seen me, I don't just do the opening remarks and I'm out of there. I'm in those. I'm
Yes, you.
listening and I'm taking notes. And that's how I learn. The other thing is I'm not a big reader of business books. I feel that doesn't help me. But what I love to read are sports books, in particular around coaches and or players that are leaders. I'm an athlete. I was, raised on sports. And so for me, that I think there's such a strong correlation between being a leader of a team on the field, on the court, to being a leader in business. That's for me where I get a lot of my inspiration around leadership and seeing how coaches manage challenge players issues. So that's something that I look. But then the other thing is for the one podcast that I do listen to, that's business wise, is the podcast Acquired. It is, some of the episodes could be 4 hours long. So these are not like digestible. And they have lots of newer companies that have raised, but they have lots of, I would call heritage companies. So Nike, Starbucks, Costco, LVMH, companies that have been around 50 plus years. That's what I want to listen to. How have leaders built those organizations from the founder to handing it over to the legacy? And that's where I find a lot of value, just because one, yes, they're huge companies now, but they all started small.
Yes. They all had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. Love that. Okay, good. Okay, our last question is, what piece of art or music or literature or whatever else keeps you balanced and brings you joy? With joy being the operative word. Because, when I think about leadership, it can't just be about work. To me, it's the whole human being. And if we don't find joy, why would anybody pay any attention to us if it's all about work? So where do you get your joy from, Cate?
So I love to travel. I am an extensive, I will hit countries 130 this year.
Wow.
Yes.
Woo.
So my hundred and it's my it'll in my 50th year, my 130th country, and my 20th country in Africa.
Wow.
So I love to learn, and I learn by experiencing. So immersing myself in a culture, feeling the senses, being with locals. And I just absolutely, that is where I get energy. That's what brings me joy, experiencing new things and getting outside of my comfort zone and really doing things that are off the beaten path, much chagrin to my boyfriend because he's like, where are we going? But
Why are we doing this?
Yes, exactly. But then I think now that's been many years, he's like, all right, I trust you. But that's something that I really will make my time for, and I carve out that time for, which is travel.
Yeah. And when you do that, do you completely unhook?
I try. I think whether I was still in banking or I'm an entrepreneur, I'm always going to be, I like to check in, check my emails, but I definitely check out, and that I've got a great team. They
Yes.
can manage. And if there is a crisis situation, which there likely isn't going to be, then they'll know where to find me. But they also know that that's how I work. I don't expect that out of
Yes.
them when they're on their vacation or they're doing something that brings them joy. But that's just how I am. My makeup is, I need to just check, and that makes me less stressed if I'm able to do that, like in the morning and the evening.
Yes. Perfect. Love that. Yeah. 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 And let us not forget about the Jersey Shore.
And
Miss.
the Jersey Shore, my beach. I love being on a beach.
Yes.
If I'm on a beach, then you will know that I am happy. It is my happy place ever since I was a kid.
Right.
And anytime, anywhere there's water, I am very, very happy.
Understood. Yeah. A little sand between the toes too.
Exactly,
Nothing wrong with that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Little waves crashing on the shore. It's and then you also, I get a lot of joy out of just watching people, especially children, and just seeing how happy they are, and that innocence and that just glee, and you hear the laughing. So I love just taking it all in when I'm there.
Yeah, love that. Okay, great. All right. So, Cate, thank you so much for the insight, for the thoughts, for the leadership. It's inspiring. And what I love about your journey is, well, first of all, the honesty is, it is you never set out to be an entrepreneur. And here
Mhm.
you are. And
Yeah.
look what's been created at Luminary. And look at how many people are so grateful for that. And And it's because of what you did before that you were able to create this. So, thank you for that. And thank you for Luminary. And thanks for being a great guest who really believes in leadership and knows that it makes a difference between what's going to work and what's not going to work.
Well, that's right back at you, right? I think it's great to be surrounded by other amazing leaders and doing what they're doing. And thank you for being a part of the community. That's the magic of what we've built, is the people that are in it.
I agree. Magic. We love magic. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. I'm Karen Colligan, and you've been listening to Cate Luzio, founder and CEO of Luminary. If this leadership podcast was of interest to you, go to our YouTube channel, People Think NY, and listen to all the distinguished leaders I've had the pleasure of interviewing. You're going to learn so much about the uniqueness of leadership. I know I have. And don't forget to share with your colleagues. Till the next episode of the Let's Talk Leadership podcast, have a good one. And don't forget to keep it real. Editing by Mary Lee Williams.